you look at recipes, you'll see that some recipes for buttermilk biscuits call for butter. Now we're going to make a cheesecake, and not just any cheesecake, it's going to be a salted caramel cheesecake. And I'm going to gradually lift it up. I'm just going to make sure that everything comes together just the way I want it to. So to finish this part, I'm going to take 4 eggs, just crack them into a bowl. I'm going to pour this filling right over the top. I'll start whisking as I add it. So this is pretty much done. I'm just going to take a little bit of butter. This isn't a necessary step, but it just gives it a little better look and a little more flavor. Hi, my name is Tom Small, and today we're going to talk about baking. Baking is probably one of the most satisfying things to do in the kitchen. And while many of us love to do it, we have our favorites, those recipes that we know work every time. It can be a little bit intimidating. You know, baking is different than everyday cooking. You have to be a little bit more precise. You have to follow recipes a little bit more specifically. You have to be able to identify what's working and what's not and kind of know some of the pitfalls that can throw you off. So we're going to make a whole bunch of recipes today, a lot of different fun things. And the idea behind each of these recipes is to kind of present a technique or an idea that's going to help you be more successful with the recipes that you make. This first step of incorporating the butter and flour together is really important. What we're trying to do is get that butter and flour work together so that the butter or the fat is spread evenly throughout the flour. But we want to do it nice and quickly so that it comes out crumbly. What that's going to do is help make a little bit more flaky of a dough. If we let this butter get really warm or even melted the butter first and put it in, then you wouldn't have a flaky biscuit. You'd have something that was kind of dense and heavy and just not nearly as good. Okay, so my butter is fairly well incorporated. I can see a difference in the flour now. I do feel some little chunks in there, but that's going to be okay. That's, again, going to add to the flakiness of the final biscuit. And so I'm just going to let it be just like that. I'm going to take a tablespoon of flour. That's right. Now, I could take a cookie cutter or a circle cutter, and I could cut circles of this and put it on. But what's going to happen is I'm going to have all these scraps, and I'm going to have to re-knead those scraps again. And each time I go through that re-kneading process, the dough is going to get a little bit denser and a little tougher, and so the biscuits aren't going to be quite as good. So what I'm going to do is just take a bench scraper. This is just a flat piece of metal that's really great for scraping up things off your countertop. And I'm just going to cut them into squares. I'd rather have a square biscuit that tasted really good than have a round biscuit that was dense because I overworked the dough. Then I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons of butter, and this butter is softened. I just popped it in the microwave for a second to get it nice and soft. So now we've got everything in there that we need. And I'm just going to lift it up. We're going to start it really slow just to get everything working together. I'm using a dough hook, which is really the best way to get this dough incorporated. If I was to use the paddle or the ball whip, it wouldn't work. Everything would get gummed up, and you even run the risk of ruining the motor. This is obviously a KitchenAid and a very good one, so it's going to bring everything together real well. Once I'm confident that the flour is not going to shoot out at me, I can go ahead and turn it up a little bit and start getting it incorporated. Rise up a little bit more. So again, this is ready. It's going to go into a 350-degree oven. It'll take about 30 minutes. So our everyday bread has been baking for about a half hour. It should be ready to go. Take it out of the oven. It's got a great golden color on the top, and then I like to just tap on it and kind of hear that hollow sound inside. That helps me know that it's done. If you're really worried about it, you could use an instant read thermometer, and it should read about 205 to 210 degrees on the inside. I just don't like to poke into the bread before it's cooled all the way. So this is pretty much done. I'm just going to take a little bit of butter. This isn't a necessary step, but it just gives it a little better look and a little more flavor. And I'm just going to run it across the top and just let a little bit of that butter melt into the bread. And that should be just fine. You really want to let your bread cool for a while before you cut into it. So we'll let this go all the way to room temperature about an hour, and it's ready to slice and use for whatever you want to use it for. And a little extra color on the roll is probably my favorite way, but we'll see how they come out when we do them all together. You want to be real careful because this dough is nice and risen, and we don't want to mess with it too much and deflate the dough on accident. So there's our egg wash. And I've got just a little bit of melted butter here. We'll do a butter wash. This is probably the one that's going to give the most flavor to the finished product and give it a little glossy shine. And then for our last one, we're going to use regular milk and do a milk wash. Milk is really going to influence the color of the finished product quite a bit. Of course, once you've washed the top of your roll, if you wanted to sprinkle some sesame seeds or something like that on top, it would be real easy to do. You need to wash it with something so that it would adhere as you put those seeds on. So these are ready to go into the oven. They're going to go into a 350-degree oven. They'll take about 25 minutes. And these are our sweet dinner rolls with the 4 different washes on the top: the water, the egg, the butter, and the milk. So I've got all those ingredients incorporated. I'm just going to put it on low speed. I'm using the paddle attachment now, not the bread dough or the dough hook. And this is going to come together really quick. We don't want to overwork it, because if we do, it's just going to be tough. It's not going to be good. It's done. That was it. So I'm going to take raspberries, and this is 1 cup of frozen raspberries. If you have fresh berries, you certainly could use them, but the reality is that most of the time, frozen berries are going to be better. They're picked at the peak of season. They're flash frozen right away. It's really not detrimental for raspberries or any berries when they're frozen. And you're just going to have a better, more consistent result each time. So this dough has barely come together. I'm going to add my 1 cup of raspberries. I've done this with blueberries and bananas and strawberries and all different types of fruit. It works perfect for just about any of them. We're going to mix it for just a second more. I can just set it aside and wait for my cheesecake to be prepared, and I'll pour the batter right into it. Let's take a quick look at our caramel. I've got a heat-resistant spatula here, and as I pull it to the side, you can see that the sugar has started to melt on the bottom and has already started to caramelize. I'll just turn my heat up a little bit. We want to use a sauté pan that's as big as possible so that we get as much sugar in contact with the pan while it's cooking. We'll let that continue to go for a couple minutes. And like the whole thing is actually like floating on top of the caramelized sugar. Okay, so it's taken a couple minutes, but my sugar's starting to caramelize. You know, there's an additional advantage to this in that I don't need to worry about the sugar crystallizing up on the sides of the pan. That only happens when there's water molecules to bond with the sugar. That's what's going to make those crystalline forms on the side that you kind of brush off with your pastry brush. This is just going to So to finish this part, I'm going to take 4 eggs. I just cracked them into a bowl. I'm going to pour this filling right over the top. I'll start whisking as I add it. Break up those eggs and get it incorporated. You really want to get the eggs fully incorporated into this, otherwise it will cook and you'll have little strands of egg inside the chocolate. It just doesn't look that attractive. But it'll just take a second to do. This chocolate is really thick, so it's easy to hide pieces of egg in there. So make sure it's really well incorporated. And that looks perfect. We're going to pour it right over our graham cracker crust. And we'll put that right into the oven. Because there's so much egg in there, it's really going to set up quite quickly. So we'll put it in the oven. We're at 350 degrees. It's going to take probably about 12 minutes. And while that's cooking, we can finish our marshmallows. So my syrup has come up to a full boil, and I don't see any grains of sugar, so I know everything's dissolved in there.